Welcome to On the Sidelines, the show that discusses sports and how sports intersects our lives. I'm your host, Paul McGrath, and I'm glad that you can join us for this show. When many of us attended our first professional sports game, the main attraction was the game, and probably only the game. But times have changed, and one of those changes is the introduction of the team mascot. Where is the use of mascots in today's game? How does one become a mascot? What actually is a mascot? Well, according to our friends at Wikipedia, a mascot is any human, animal, or object thought to bring luck or anything used to represent a group with a common public identity, such as a school, a sports team, society, military unit, or brand name. So that covers quite a bit. The word itself originates from the French term mascotte, M-A-S-C-O-T-T-E, which means lucky charm. The word lucky is there again. The word was first recorded in 1867 by a French composer by the name of Edmond Audran. To help us discuss this phenomenon, On the Sidelines is glad to have Westboro's own Geoff Spofford, who was one of the first mascots of the Worcester IceCats and went by the name of Scratch. Welcome, Geoff, or should I say Scratch?
Scratch was a long time ago, but I still go by it sometimes. But thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Well, it's good to be here. So how did we ever get to be Scratch? How did one ever want to be a mascot? Because mascots were just, I think, at that time coming into vogue. What we'll get to it, the first NHL mascot was in 1984. Well, okay. The IceCats started in 1994. So right. Did they advertise? Did you ever see mascots? How did a guy ever say, I want to be a mascot?
Well, I think the inspiration came twofold in college. Yep. So I was a UNH Wildcat. I did the radio for the UNH hockey team. They had a sort of dumpy cat-looking mascot, and I never got to be that mascot. I always wanted to be.
A Wildcat.
A Wildcat.
Wildcat, yep.
But the inspiration really for fun mascots was when my father and I went up to the University of Vermont to see the college when I was looking at colleges. Yeah. And the Catamount mascot was a fast skating cat who would go by the visiting team bench and lift his leg, and he had a lot of fun. The Wildcat at UNH sort of just skated around the ice, didn't do much. So come full scale to 1994, and the IceCats are coming to town, and I'm a practicing lawyer in the city of Worcester at the time, and I'm one of the first season ticket holders. I've got my seat all set up. I went over to the team store, and they had a 25% off sale for season ticket holders. I'm getting stuff, and they had a sign inside the thing. They were looking for a mascot. And they said, "Are you between 5'11" and 6'1"? Yeah. Are you proud of the city of Worcester? Yeah. Are you good with kids? Yeah. Do you know where your skates are in your closet? Yeah. They said, can you skate with the grace of Kerrigan and the speed of Gretzky? I said, I got 4 out of the 5 questions. And next thing you know, I'm being egged on by some of the IceCat people and my friends to try out. So I showed up for the auditions. I was one of 18 people there. I guarantee I was the only lawyer there.
Now, this is at the DCU or whatever it was called at the time?
The Worcester Centrum at the time.
Yep.
And they had 2 polar bear costumes from Polar Beverages to use because they didn't even have the IceCat costume yet. So we wore the costumes. We were given 90 seconds with music on the ice to do whatever we wanted. But we had to end our.
Now you had your skates. You're on ice.
Your skates. You're doing what you can. And my whole thing was I was going to do it on athleticism and speed. I was a good skater. Again,
Did you ever play hockey?
I grew up skating ponds and playing lots of pond hockey in Bedford. And we lived right near where the Concord River would overflow the banks, and we could skate out there. my backyard neighbor was the Norton family, and Jeff Norton went on to play 16 years in the NHL after moving to Acton. But we had some good skaters, and I loved being out on the ice and skating. So when I did my tryout, the only requirement we had was at the end of it, we had to throw a frisbee to John Whiteman, who was the announcer and media and head of media and head of public relations.
Well, they wore 100 hats, those guys.
And John's one of my very closest friends. In addition to doing the mascot, I did about 20 games on the radio with him, doing color when I wasn't Scratch, and I stay in touch with John regularly. He's in his 19th year right now with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Right, he's excellent.
So I did my when I did the audition, Paul, I jumped out on the ice. I flew down the ice with the costume, and I came ripping around the curve, and the head on the costume was just sitting flush. Well, now the head turned. So now
it turned one way, and
I'm skating down the ice, and I'm going. The judges.
So are you blind now?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking over my shoulder this way, and it's the Worcester Telegram reporters, Diane Williamson, and some of the reporters from Worcester Telegram in the bench. They're the judges. And as I go skating by with my head turned and I'm trying to do something, I fell. Okay. So I sort of did the rock lobster with my feet up in the air, and I had a lot of fun. I didn't get it. I wasn't. You
didn't make it.
I didn't.
So what did you have to do with the frisbee?
So they wanted you to be. I had to throw the frisbee the length of the ice to John.
Okay. So you were at one end, he's at the other,
right.
and
they just wanted to know you could do it. There was no, and I did. I threw it directly to him. They wanted to see how nimble you were or coordinated you were in the costume. One guy, I remember this guy, the guy was a carpenter, got out there and he brought a bag and a golf club, and he proceeded out there and he hit like 9 balls up into the stands, thinking that'll be his shtick. The guy who got it, though, was an elementary school teacher at Tatnick Elementary.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And he had been a St. Peter Marian hockey goalie star. So if people remember the early days of Scratch used to go out there and do a split. And there were T-shirts made of Scratch doing a split. So when people would ask me, once I was the backup, I'd do 6 to 8 games a year until the 5th year when I was the regular, for 26 games. They'd say, Jeff, how will we know if it's you? And I said, well, if you see Scratch do a split and they have to take him off the ice in an ambulance, then it was me. Yeah, but so I didn't get it. I didn't even get to be the alternate, but they didn't like the alternates they got. So I had become friendly with the people in the office. They called me up, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving. They called me up on the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, and I knew they had 3 games coming up. I'm like, yes, they're calling me. I'm going to do it. They actually called me because the day after Thanksgiving was the Christmas tree lighting parade in Worcester, where you went all the way from the old Marriott down around the old
Lincoln
courthouse.
Down Lincoln Square.
Right, and you went all the way up to City Hall. And I'd never worn the costume, and they wanted me to be Scratch. Actually, they wanted me to be the IceCat. There was no name for Scratch. Scratch didn't get named until the day after Christmas of 1994.
I figured. Now, did they have a contest, or did they name?
Did.
They did.
They did. I'll tell you a funny story. We were at that game, and I was with some other lawyer friends, a lawyer named Gail Weiss, and her son Joseph, who was 6 or 7 years old. Yeah. And Joseph's sitting next to me, and he turned to me and he said, Mr. Spofford, did you put a name in for Scratch? Did you put a name in for the mascot?
For the mascot, yeah.
I said, no, Joseph, I didn't. I said, did you? He said, I didn't, but if I had put one in, I was thinking I'd put in the name Scratch.
Really? Yeah.
And lo and behold, they come out and they announce the winner. McDonald's had been the receptacle for all of the entries. Yeah. And Scratch was the announced name. So, the first fall, when I did the parade, we had a T-shirt, an IceCat T-shirt over the costume. And I didn't know that for that particular parade, it's outdoors. And so I wore a sweatshirt under the costume. Then you had a big chest pad to make yourself look bigger, and you're furry. I'd never been so hot. And if there were 10,000 fans there, which is what they estimated, I shook 9,500 hands. I went everywhere. And turned purple by the time they got me to City Hall.
So when you did your first game, what were the instructions? Anything like you're on your own, buddy?
So the first game I ever did was January 8, 1995. I remember the date because I had just gone from one law firm to another on January 1st of that year.
Yeah.
So I'm at this new firm and I get a call from the IceCats and they said, Geoff, it's City of Worcester night tonight at the IceCats. Polar Beverage is a big sponsor and they want Orson, the polar bear, skated. And
I think we have a picture.
Would I do Orson?
Is this Orson?
That is me.
Gets to hug. I guess you get to hug the women or something too.
Well, yeah.
All right, continue.
You get to hug everybody. So at this game, and there's a funny story that has a little bit of Westboro to it.
Yeah.
That game, I believe, was against the Hershey Bears, and we had the record crowd of I think 14,000 people. I mean, the place was packed. So I was Orson, the regular was Scratch, and
so you had both Orson and Scratch.
Orson and Scratch.
This particular game.
So I did Orson I think 4 times that year, and when we were going around inside the concourse at one point, I ran into Scarlett Scannell, who grew up here in Westboro as Scarlett Bell, and Scarlett was in the concourse area. And she's an assistant district attorney. I'm a defense attorney, or was at the time doing that, a lot of more criminal defense work. And I went up behind her. Now, mascots aren't supposed to talk.
Right.
But I went up behind her and grabbed her in a hug and whispered through the costume, "Hi, Scarlett." And she had no clue.
She had no.
I left her, and she was just flabbergasted. Who was that? So that was my first time on the ice. As Orson, I knew from having done the audition, don't skate too fast and turn, because the head is, I mean, the scratch costume they told me cost about $10,000. The head had a fan built into it. The fan had a wire that went down to a battery pack you wore around your waist, so you had constant air blowing on your face.
Wow. But there was no opening for your mouth, though, right?
You didn't need it. I mean, it was a big, wide open area. You wore the head was mounted on a hockey helmet that came through and strapped under your chin.
Here we have. So there's a helmet in there somewhere.
There's a hockey helmet in there. Yeah. I'm looking through the mouth, and the mouth.
You look through the mouth.
The mouth has double pane of mesh.
Yeah.
And somehow that allows the person in there to look right out.
Oh, wow.
But people can't see.
Yeah, because it's a one-way mirror type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my view was actually pretty good, except for this, and it happened to me twice. If bright white lights were shining down, so in a rink it was fine.
Yeah.
But if they had spotlights, like the Christmas tree lighting parade, or like opening night of 1998 that I did, and they had spotlights, it blinds that entire mouth. So you're skating blind out there. And that could lead to some problems. But yeah, you look through that.
And now here you are, in a white. So there are different uniforms too. There was more than one.
So
one was
we had
like home away.
The blue was now this is, so there's my favorite. White was usually the home one.
Yeah. This
is me on the night we unveiled the 5th anniversary jersey.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So
that's the new logo.
This was the new jersey just for that year, and they still wear a black one.
Yeah.
But what was really neat about that was how the team took it. Now, the only time you're really with the team is to lead the team out onto the ice for the national anthem. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going onto the ice after they've left.
You guys
for the
are
intermission.
Ships crossing in the night there.
Right,
yeah?
And I'm coming out from a different entrance. So I come out with the Zamboni or Scratch.
Oh, you're in the Zamboni entrance, yeah.
So that particular night when I'm down there near the locker room, and the players are coming out and they're looking at the jerseys. And they're like, guys, this is hot. This looks good. They liked the black. They liked the intimidation. Yeah. So I can always say I was the first one ever to wear one of those uniforms on the ice because I lead them onto the ice. So that was really a fun one. That was before the game. They had me go out and we took some pictures. But that was a fun one. But so I did. I looked through the mouth. One of the interesting things, and I've seen Scratches made some reappearances in recent years with the railers. But they don't use the foot covers. So the big foot covers are padded.
So how do you get the foot cover over the skate? I mean,
you pull it all the way up to your knee when you put your skates on. You pull that on, put that on first, pull it up to your knee. Then you put your skates on, and then you push it down, and it covers your skate.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So two things about that. If you skate hard and you skate fast and you corner,
Yeah.
You start to angle down on the edges.
Yeah.
So my first time first time ever skating a scratch was a Learn to Skate program it was actually a hockey team up at the Wallace Civic Center in Fitchburg. And two friends of mine were the coaches, two lawyers whose kids played. And I went flying down the ice with all the kids skating with me, started my cross steps and went onto the pillows, whoosh, and I took 6 kids out into the boards.
Yeah, because there's not much space there between the blade and your pillow or whatever you want to call it.
So then I had to do, the next time down, I took 5 kids out. And then I realized you have to go fast. You can't let the skates angle down too much. And then the other thing is there's a Velcro strap that goes underneath there that keeps it on.
Oh, I see. Oh.
So one game, and I always had, if there was going to be a problem with my costume or a problem with me, it was always going to be the Bruins. And so one game, the strap has started to break, so someone wrapped duct tape around it, thinking that would help the strap. Well, duct tape may be great, but duct tape prevents it from sticking. Yeah. So this particular game, I jump out on the ice to lead the team onto the ice. The strap lets loose, gets under the blade. I'm kicking around and falling. I remember there was a player named Marquis Mathieu, and I knew Marquis. And at one point I fell, and I'm sliding into him. Marquis had to catch me. I went skating across the ice after the anthem towards the Bruins bench, and the skate gave way, and it was one of the players had to keep me from going into the Bruins bench because the door was open. So you always had, that was the pillowed shoes. But
so how long would it take you to dress? I mean, you got quite a few things to put on there.
You did.
Yeah, I mean,
and it didn't take too long.
No, really, yeah.
You'd have it set up down near the Zamboni. Actually, no, I would have a separate area that I'd get dressed the first time, because then you'd have the costume on for the rest of the day.
Because the Zamboni entrance is way on the other side, the locker room.
But that's where we'd have our skates. Yeah. Once the game got going, that's where you'd get ready, because the players would be coming on and off the ice. But it wouldn't take too long, and it was always fun to go out to events and put the costume on. You'd try and find a place to put the costume on. You had a big chest pad that zipped up. You had the battery pack. You had the wires, and I'd say 90% of the time the fan worked. And those times that didn't work, you just got extra hot inside of there. But yeah, it was a fun costume to put on, and you wanted to be complete. I remember being asked. I believe it was Warner Fletcher from Fletcher Tilton was having a big birthday party, and Fletcher Tilton, the law firm, had rented out the Higgins Armory.
Oh, really? Yes.
And they had me come up to, because at that time, Tony Tilton and a number of the partners there, Phillips Davis, were part owners. So when the IceCats started up in '94, it was independent ownership, and it was a lot of local people along with Roy Bowe. So I went up, we had the costume, we had no gloves. So you can't go out and be scratched with hands. And somebody drove down to the Centrum and came back.
Just to get the gloves?
Just to get the gloves. We thought about putting it into Knight's armor. We thought scratch with maybe some swords and stuff. But we did some fun stuff with the taking the costume. But the IceCats were very particular. They would not let scratch appear at we had 2 costumes. But if there was a game going on, you were not going to be in costume somewhere else.
There was only one event.
Oh yeah. Because there's only one scratch.
So how many you would do the games, but then they would have different events. How would they call you up and say, "Hey, are you available?" Because you can't do everything. I mean, you do have work for a living.
Right. I didn't do many of the events. I think they would use in-office people. The regular and I, we each had families, we each had jobs, we had young families. I would do them by my choosing. Sometimes I would do volunteer stuff. My brother-in-law is a Special Olympian, and WPI hosted the Special Olympics a few times. So I asked the IceCats, can I take the costume and go do, the Special Olympic athletes loved having scratch there. After I stopped doing it on a full-time basis, I started helping teach skating lessons up at the Buffoni Arena. And I'd make arrangements for scratch, get the costume for the last session of the 10 sessions and skate that. I did I was on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters, for instance, and I got the costume for the holiday party where one of the traditions was to give a lot of bikes. And I think I may be the only Scratch who ever rode a bike and did that. I always wanted to ski as Scratch, and I was very involved with skiing after I was done as Scratch. And after the IceCats left up at Ski Warden, I thought that would have been kind of fun to ski in the costume. One of the funniest ones I did, they did ask me to do the business expo in the DCU. And Fallon Clinic had a climbing wall, you know, with the things you climb, and they had you on belay with the ropes. So they hooked me up. They had the harness on, and I started climbing. And there had to be there were two of them. So there was an 8-year-old boy next to me. A Scratch came up next to him. The kid sort of panicked on the wall. And then I went up just a little bit too far, and the rope caught onto the head.
Ooh.
And if I went down, the head was going to be stuck.
That's not a good combination.
No, and that's the worst thing I think that can ever happen to a mascot, is to lose your head. And luckily I didn't that time. I had an incident, as I said, the Bruins could bring out the worst of you, and I was doing a Bruins game the year that I was the regular, and I had skated down the ice, and I was flying, and skating back down the ice backwards, playing a racquetball racket like a banjo because we had a little promo, and I realized the Zamboni was coming up. So I turned around quick. I went around the back of the Zamboni, and I went around backwards, and my foot caught in the goalpost hole that was open. I went up in the air, came down, boom, and the head exploded off of me. And thank heavens for the cord that was attached to the fan that was attached to the fanny pack, because the head only got about 18 inches away, and I was able to put it back on. But the fans gave me a little bit of a hard time in the third period, so back down. I remember getting home that night, and my wife was already in bed, and Juliana said, she could see, she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "What's the worst thing that can happen to a mascot?" She said, "Your head came off." I went into the locker room that night for a shower, and Jason Widmer was our captain at the time.
Jason,
And Wids looked at me and he said, "Scratch, tough day there with the head." The good part was I learned from some of our Ice Patrol guys that a guy the mascot in Springfield, the Falcons, had let a friend of his wear the costume one day. And he went out onto the ice after the Zamboni had come around, and it was completely smooth. And the guy slipped, fell, the head came off, and it just shot down the smooth ice. So here's a guy not supposed to be wearing the costume, chasing the head down the ice, running. So I can say it.
I thought you were going to say it went to under the Zamboni, but okay, that would have been bad.
No.
But we've got another one here.
Okay.
What's this one? Talk about what's going on here. Can we talk about this?
Can I take the fifth on that one? So, when you take the costume out, the costume for events, and you took it home, sometimes some fun things would happen.
Yeah.
And that's my wife Juliana with Scratch. They were very close.
You didn't mind, huh?
I think she likes Scratch more than me.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Scratch is very happy though.
So you got to bring the uniform home sometimes. You didn't leave it at the rink.
Well, if I was going to be doing an event usually, so I might have it. If it was something I was going to be doing, I'd go to the schools sometimes. I'd go to different places, and so the costume would come home, and friends, I had no problem putting it on at home. We had it for one of my daughter's birthdays. We had Scratch, and I was appreciative that I could actually still be with my daughter for the birthday, and asked my good friend Ed Belbin, who was a teacher here in Westboro, if he would wear the costume.
Okay, so it wasn't you when.
He got to. So Ed can say he was Scratch once. I don't want him to say.
Is it on his resume? Well,
it is. It is. It is. Yeah. So that was an interesting, interesting picture. I remembered that one.
Well, we're gonna go along here for a minute. We were fortunate to have 5 mascots here at our mascot extravaganza. Plus you is the original Scratch, and the expressions on the kids' faces when they saw the mascots. If we can run some of that, so we had this in February at the rec center, and there they are. There are the mascots. We're fortunate to have Worcester from the Worcester Red Sox was there. There's Tracks, the second one from the Railers. Geoff was there. We had Blades from the Bruins and the Battalion. There's Milo from the New Hampshire Speedway. And the kids, when they saw these mascots, their eyes just kind of bugged out. And there's Tracks. We tried to get, you were there, Geoff. We tried to get the uniform for scratch. We called up Mike Myers, a great guy for the Railers, but I guess the uniform is put away at the museum somewhere, brought out for special occasions. We didn't quite qualify, but Mike was great. He got us Tracks. Yeah. But this, I don't know, the kids love these guys. And we never had this when we were kids. You never knew what was going on.
No. You know, it's funny because I was with these guys when they were getting the costumes on. Yeah. They're all good guys. Yeah. They're just putting the costumes on. But I remember the same thing. As soon as you put that costume on, it sort of takes over and you become the character.
You're in character.
I remember at times where I was doing a special event and I'd put it on at the IceCat office and I'd annoy the hell out of the IceCat staff because as soon as I had it on, I'm bounding in and out of their offices and I'm high-fiving the staff. It's like...
You're Scratch. All of a sudden you're Scratch.
It was an interesting thing. I was in with Kathleen Hannon, was the vice president, one of the vice presidents of the IceCats. And Kathleen and I were talking, and you know, it was strange for them to have a lawyer that was being the mascot, and I was probably the only lawyer in the country working as a professional mascot on the side. And I said to Kathleen, you know, for 3 hours, I get to be somebody completely different. And she said, no, for 3 hours, you get to be completely yourself.
Yeah.
And you know what? That was interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about seeing the smiles on the kids' faces at that event. As the mascot, looking through that huge thing that I could see through as Scratch, I got to see these smiles that were just unbelievable. And they didn't know I was looking at them. So when we adults look at a kid who's smiling and we think they look cute, they see us, they turn their heads. But when the mascot's looking at them, they don't know, and you get these incredible smiles. Or, conversely, you get these horrific yells.
They go the other way.
Oh, there was some that just took off. There was some that screamed. And the fun part was every game you wanted to make some adults scream. So you'd try and creep up in the stands and make sure you got somebody.
So would you, in between periods?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but when the game, not between periods, when the game's going on, would you take those skates off then and go up into the crowd?
Yeah, and I think for the IceCats, I was the last one who did all of it. From the start of a game, I would be pre-game, I might go out and see fans when they were arriving, go down underneath, get the skates on, lead the team onto the ice, game would start up, I'd go off, I'd get the pillow, I'd have big slipper type things. Yeah. Put them on. I'd be in the stands, I think until about 6 minutes left in the period.
You had to zip down,
Go down, put the skates on, be ready to jump on. After I stopped, I got hurt, they would then use...
On ice?
On ice, at a game. Oh. After the national anthem, I came across the ice, and it's the only time you're on the ice with the team, and unfortunately, my kneecap dislocated and broke part of the femur.
Oh, my God.
Lying there on the ice, and players are skating by, and they got me off the ice. But after that, they returned the regular. He had been injured that year, so that's why I was the regular. And but they started using one guy in the stands and one guy on the ice.
Oh, I see.
So
were you an employee or were you an independent contractor? How did they work that out? Oh, do we want to talk about that?
I think I was a W-2 employee.
W-2 employee.
So I was an IceCat. You know, it's funny, when I tried out and I auditioned, I had no conception that they were going to pay, and they didn't pay me very much, but I just liked the idea.
You were just doing it for the love of the game, or whatever.
For the love of the game, for the love of Worcester. You know, I was excited about the IceCats coming to Worcester, and the IceCats grabbed Worcester like nothing else.
Well, there had been no professional really team in Worcester.
Well, they'd had the Worcester Marauders football. Yeah. It was the New England Blazers lacrosse, Massachusetts Marauders football. And I emphasize it because it was my friend Bill Ballou, who was the radio broadcaster for the IceCats, who pointed out this was the first team to use the moniker for Worcester.
The name Worcester.
Worcester.
Yeah.
And I think they took the city by storm. You had Jimmy Roberts come in as the coach general manager.
Former Montreal Canadiens,
Stanley
Cup. Yep.
Stanley Cup,
Yep.
St. Louis Blue.
Yep.
He had 6 Stanley Cup rings to his name. So he had credibility coming in. They had John Weideman, who came out of Muskegon, Michigan, and convinced them to hire him. And John worked tirelessly in public relations and as the best broadcaster the American Hockey League ever saw.
I remember listening to him, and it's like, what is he doing here? I mean, that's how good he was.
Well, he left and he went to Philadelphia for a brief time. Then he was kicking around for a few years, but he's now in his 19th season with the Chicago Blackhawks. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's just great. I was out in Chicago in the fall, and I was talking to an Uber driver who said, "Oh, we've got John Weideman doing the radio. He's the best there is." Yeah. That's what you wanted to see from an American Hockey League developmental team. Send everybody.
Yeah, not just the players.
Not just the players, broadcasters, front office staff. Not necessarily mascots. Although I will tell you, in 1997, the regular Scratch and I were approached by the Red Sox because they were creating a mascot named Wally. So everyone knows Wally the Green Monster, and if you look, his number is 97. And the Red Sox liked the energy that the regular Scratch and I brought to the ice. And they asked us if we would be Wally the Green Monster. And we both turned them down because we had young families, and it would be a lot of work.
Well, there's a lot of more baseball games than hockey games.
Well, and there were. And think about all the events. Well, what happened, interestingly, the night I got hurt, we had a high school intern following me around named Chris Bergstrom. And that was 1999. And a couple years later, somehow Chris Bergstrom parlayed his experience as Scratch. He became Scratch in the stand. He didn't skate. But he became Wally the Green Monster for 13 years. He's got 3 World Series rings to his credit.
And nobody knows who he is.
And he's a great guy. He was terrific. And I was sitting in the game. I'll tell you one story. And then sitting at a Red Sox game, last row of the field box, aisles right behind me with my 2 brothers. And here comes Wally, and he leans over. And again, you're not supposed to talk, but I hear him, "Hey, Geoff Spofford, how you doing?" My brother said, "What are you guys, unionized or something?"
But there is a camaraderie, I'm sure. But again, I think what that shows is the evolving atmosphere of mascots. That was 97.
Right.
So they were after the hockey, the hockey style. I mean, all of a sudden now everybody seems to have it. If you don't, of all the teams, there's 32 NHL teams. Do you know how many do not have a mascot?
I have no idea.
You can guess. You're allowed to guess.
I would say 5.
You're high.
I'm high. I would say 2.
You're high.
I would say 0.
Now you're low.
I went too far.
1.
Wow.
And it is the New York Rangers of all teams.
No kidding.
Yep. So anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I know, just to talk about the IceCats, because they really were, as we said, the first Worcester-based professional team. Their first team, as you said, were really independent.
Right.
And you kind of look at what I looked at, and this turned into more work than I thought, but I looked at how many players on that team played in the NHL. Now, they could be coming down at the end of their career, or they could be on the rise.
Right.
Well, it came to 11 players who played 971 games in the NHL. If you divide that by an 82-game schedule, that comes to 12 years. And their top players were John Carter and Walt Podubny.
Right.
You go 1 year later, when they had the affiliation with the St. Louis Blues, over that year, they had 33 players, 8,137 games, which equates to 99 years. And Ian LaPerriere and Steve Stais were the top players in the NHL. So Worcester really changed from that independent. It shows you need that affiliation.
Right.
And of course, they had Scratch all the time. And I mentioned John Carter because we have a picture here of you with, I guess it's you with John Carter.
Yes.
And what was going on here?
So one of the things I did was it was a celebrity softball game in Worcester, raising money for some very good cause. It brought in the Worcester, the former Bruins alumni team.
Yeah.
So I remember Lyndon Byers came, John Carter came as a former Boston Bruin, and I was there as Scratch. Yeah, it created an interesting part at one point. The fans want to come and hug Scratch and shake your hand, and this one person comes up, wants to give me a hug, this woman, and I look at her and I realize she's the opposing wife on a divorce case my office is doing. I said, I got to watch out on this. This could be a problem.
She cannot know who Scratch is.
No.
Yes.
But John, John was a local guy out of Woburn and played at RPI, played with the Bruins for a while. And then he was trying to regenerate his hockey career with the IceCats. John had a game, I believe it was January of 1995, where he scored 5 goals. For the IceCats.
Yeah.
And it became the big the high five, John Carter high five. And then he and I got together in my lawyer capacity with a woman named Kathy Parker, who was head of the fan club. And we created the John Carter High Five Fund that was managed by one of the Worcester mega charities. Mm-hmm. And it was to raise money for students or for kids who wanted to play hockey and didn't have the money to do it. I think we got Rotmans involved. And John was just a really good guy. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people may know he suffered an eye injury and lost an eye as a result.
When he was with the Bruins.
When he was with the Bruins.
Boston Bruins. John, that 94-95 season, that was his last season as a professional hockey player. He was with the IceCats. He played 64 games, 18 goals, 9 assists, 27 points, and 96 penalty minutes. So that was his last hurrah. Yeah.
The 96 penalty minutes was clear. I mean, John was a grinder. He was a great guy. He was a grinder. I think before coming to the IceCats, he'd already suffered the eye injury.
Oh, right. He
was playing, and it was the next summer. If I remember him telling me the story that unfortunately the problem with the eye got worse, and he wound up having to lose the eye.
Right. I mean, it is very similar to Willie O'Ree, the first Negro to play in the NHL.
Right.
Willie didn't have sight in one eye.
Right.
But he wouldn't tell anybody because they wouldn't. And now he's in the Hall of Fame. Willie's a great guy, but it's amazing what adversity they go through. But the people love any ex-Bruin. I mean, I'm sure you got a great crowd for that game. And then Scratch, you were just the icing on the cake, I think.
Scratch was always fun. I mean, it was. The IceCats, the first year of the IceCats, I think the popularity that the regular Mark started with Scratch was just unbelievable. To the point that when the team went up to UMass Medical Center, the hospital, to hand out Christmas presents to the kids, Scratch took away the attention from Santa Claus. So in future events, they tried not to have Scratch and Santa Claus together because they didn't want Santa Claus to be overshadowed.
Well, that shows you the popularity.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's go over. We talked about if you want to comment, we have some in the mid-2000s, Scratch went to Fails. So we're going to show some pictures of Scratch at Fails. If anybody knows who they are, Jeff, you want to comment on some of them. These kids are grown up now, and maybe there's still parents around. There you are.
Put my glasses on.
Okay, just go.
That first one there is one that's near and dear to my heart. That's my daughter Hannah.
Oh, I see. Can we embarrass her here? Or
we can. This was Hannah's. So funny thing on mascots. Once you're a mascot, people think you can be a mascot in anything. So this is Hannah in first grade. She had Gene Catralis as a first grade teacher who was beloved by many. Because of my mascot role, the Fails, and I think the other schools, had a scholastic book sale every year.
Yeah.
And Clifford the Big Red Dog was the big costume for that.
So they had a mascot.
They had a mascot, but somebody had to do it. So guess who?
How many guesses do I get?
So Mary Beth Donovan was in charge of this event. And Mary Beth gave me the costume, said, Jeff, can you do Clifford? What happened, though, is Mary Beth at the end of the event refused to take the costume back. She said, "You've got a lot of years left in Fales." So I was Clifford the Big Red Dog as well for all of these events. Until one year, the Scholastic Books or whoever it was sent a new Clifford costume, and the costume had to be 4 or 5 inches shorter. I mean, the arms were exposing. So this very dear daughter of mine, who now was in 7th or 8th grade, she and Riley Gardner, Pete and Kelly Gardner's daughter,
really?
served as Clifford the Big Red Dog with my supervision for the Usborne Scholastic Book Sale. And Hannah was the right person. She could pull that off without any problem.
So what else? Let's go slowly if we can. Well, that one is tough to tell who that is.
That was tough to tell.
Maybe
I think
somebody,
it's Olivia Harwood.
Only a mother and father can probably tell who that is if they're still here. Now here we go. I don't know who's the teacher there. Do you know?
That's Jean Catralis.
That is, and that's
her first.
That would be the
class.
First grade class around 2004 or 5.
This is another one of the first grade teachers, if I remember right.
Oh my God, the principal's office.
Scratch took over the office. Yeah,
he gave everyone a free pass for a long recess.
This is Andrea Macknick, who was a secretary in the Fales School and ultimately went on and worked with Amber Bach in the superintendent's office, I believe, for a while. But Andrea actually lives, I think, 4 houses down from me on Old Colony Drive now.
Well, we can embarrass her. There we go. Now the principal, the real principal.
That's Elaine Halford when she was principal, and she then went back to teaching. Elaine's great. That's Gina Weber. She about the size of a kindergartner, but she was a kindergarten teacher at the time.
I could relate to the kids. Here's another boy.
I want to say his name is Owen for some reason. And there's Hannah again with Mrs. Catralis. And it was so fun. I can see Chris LaMountain with his hand against his mouth in the front near Olivia Harwood.
Oh, yeah.
Katie Bretta is right in front of Jean Catralis. Leah Drotch in this shirt with the smiley faces.
Well, you're doing pretty good.
Alice Ray all the way over there to the left, missing a tooth. And Quinn Donovan up in the back left corner. His name is Mark, if I remember right. I forget his last name. There's Mark. I see Katie with the bandana on there. Hannah, well, you can see Hannah got a little bit extra attention.
I wonder why. Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but we had a great time. It was, it was so much fun to bring the smiles into the face. Hannah and Olivia Harwood.
Now I assume your daughter kept quiet on who Scratch was.
Well, I think, I don't know if she did for that day. I mean, my kids never knew when I was actually doing it at the games. Hannah was only 18 months old.
Oh, I see, yeah.
At her oldest.
At that point in time, yeah. Okay, well, the Fales was very good. We're going to go finish up here. So this has really evolved, and the NHL, I think, was one of the first to kind of gravitate toward a mascot.
Yeah.
And the first mascot ever in the NHL, and we have him here, was Harvey the Hound for the Calgary Flames. Now, how the Calgary Flames came up with Harvey the Hound is beyond me. Although there was a school out there, St. Notre Dame school, which is Vinnie Cavalier, and them went to that school. So maybe they got it from that. But they went crazy with Harvey, and Harvey actually had a favorite book, Hound of the Baskervilles. His favorite song was Hound Dog. They come up with all this stuff for a mascot, but that was 1984. Wow. So Harvey the Hound was the first NHL mascot, 1984, and it took off a little bit after that. Now this one, we don't have the actual mascot, but Al the Octopus. So how do we get the octopus and how do we get Al for the Detroit Red Wings? Well, in 1952 this started, and at that time, 8 wins would win the Stanley Cup. The Red Wings had won 7 straight, and the next game would make a perfect 8 in a row for the championship, a feat that had never been accomplished at that time. So 2 brothers who owned a fish market took an octopus with 8 tentacles for the 8 wins and threw it onto the ice. The Stanley Cup was won, and a tradition was born. And to complete the story, the octopus was named for Al Sabatka, the arena's former building operations manager, Al Sabatka. So they take on a life of their own, really.
Yeah.
We'll do a couple more. This one really intrigued me, and this is Stinger for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And the Columbus came into the NHL in 2000 and needed a name. Wendy's ran a contest and 14,000 entries were received. The winner was Blue Jackets, a name paying homage. Now, the Blue Jackets is really a name paying homage to the many Ohioans who served in the Union Army and to the manufacturer in Columbus of Union Army uniforms. So, Stinger, my original thought when I heard the name was, well, it's a blue jacket, it's like a yellow jacket, but really it was because of the Union Army. But then the mascot goes back to like a yellow jacket. So I was thoroughly confused, but that's the history kind of a Stinger, which is for the Union Army. Anyway, you never know what you're going to get. Now here's blades. Now the Bruins were kind enough to send blades out for the event that we had. And in 1999, the Boston Bruins had a contest to name the mascots. A 9-year-old girl by the name of Jillian Dempsey won the contest. She now plays for the Boston Fleet.
That's great.
In the Professional Women's Hockey League. The name she chose was Blades. So let's hear it for the Boston Bruins and Blades. Thanks for coming, and here's Blades.
Yeah.
Then the last one we'll touch upon was the LA Kings. Now, they had a mascot by the name of Kingston from 1990 to 96. Then there was a gap until in 2007 when Bailey was named. This is Bailey. Now, how do you get Bailey? I've heard of Beetle Bailey. I've heard of Why Don't You Come Home, Bill Bailey. How did we get Bailey? No, the name has a connection right here to Boston. We're going to show, here's the picture of the man that played 568 games in the NHL, including seasons in 1970 and 72 with the Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins. He was the director of pro scouting for the Los Angeles Kings, and on September 11th, 2001, was on board United Airlines Flight 175 from Boston that never made it to Los Angeles. His name is Garnett Ace Bailey, a fine tribute to a fine man. That is Bailey, how Bailey got his name. So all these stories are just, I'm sure we could do a bunch of stories, but they go on and they go on and they go on. We're going to show one, if you have time, if you ever have time, you're looking for a lighthearted movie. They actually made a movie on mascots.
Oh, yeah.
Let's look at the trailer.
Mascotting is not unlike a marriage in that it's about cooperation, it's about listening.
Yeah.
Even if people are screaming at you, you're not allowed to talk. And that's a good lesson for a marriage,
Yeah.
you know?
Hundreds of mascots wanted to compete in this year's competition. We finally narrowed it down to 20 finalists.
Danny the donkey, my mascot, was the first one to have an anatomically correct costume. You know, I was overcompensating, classic overcompensation.
I'm Alvin the armadillo. I love all kinds of dancing. I can hip hop, I can pop. I went to the Fluffies 5 years ago. I got honorable mention. That's like first place, really, but it's a weird first place.
My name is Tommy, also known as the Fist. A lot of people say I'm the bad boy of sports mascottery.
Stop humping my wife!
To be fair, I am currently serving 6 temporary suspensions.
I announced the gold category. I wrote a book and I got more applause than you did.
Did they make you this size just to fit in the worm costume?
No, they made me this size when I was born.
Oh, I see. I thought maybe they shrunk you down or something.
No, it's not like that.
Just tell me everything. This fascinates the hell out of me.
She's a pencil.
Emotions.
That came so close to me.
Benny the banana slug failed his drug test.
What?
Have you been drinking today? Yes. No. Yes.
Laughing.
We have a drug problem, and we got a sex problem. Hey, get back here!
Mascots, they don't die. They just hang in a closet.
Yeah, because it's an outfit.
It is, it's an outfit.
I'm crazy about you.
That's really sweet. I'll take that over some guy, defecating on my head.
Well, it takes all types to be a mascot. One thing that I'm intrigued with, and now we're more in a casual area here of life, but the IceCats, the tie, the scratch, that has got to be an iconic tie. I don't know what you get on eBay for that baby.
I don't know what it would get. It hangs proudly on my tie rack. I give it its own space. I don't want any other ties touching it.
Yep.
It doesn't come out very much.
I was going just for special occasions, maybe like
this
today.
This was a very special occasion to bring it out. The IceCats had a lot of great merchandise, and I'm sure that the Railers do. I'm sure the Sharks did. But the IceCats, as I said before, the IceCats came to town with local ownership, and there was a passion for that local ownership, and there was a passion to unite with the town. I think affiliations, the Blues, they really just want to bring the players. When the IceCats were here, they just wanted the players to come up. They didn't care necessarily about the relationship in the town. And so that first couple of years just grabbed the city, and certainly grabbed me. It's fun to see the IceCats stuff, and you talk about the music. I mean, with Scratch, Stray Cat Strut, Cat Scratch Fever. We had some great music that would lead me out. One of the fun side stories on that was I did a wedding as Scratch, or part of it. It was my neighbors across the street, Dave and Judy Hall here in Westboro. Their daughter Sue, I helped her get a job with the IceCats, and she met her future husband, who was an intern with John Weideman on the radio. So when they got engaged, Judy Hall ran across, and before she even told me they were engaged, she said, "We need you to be Scratch at a wedding." And so the reception was at the Sterling Country Club, and I got the costume, and I had the person who did all of our music at the Centrum create a CD for me. So after dinner, I slid into the back, and Julie Belbin and her sister Mo Gaddy introduced, said, "Sue, Sean, there's one person who was always part of your relationship from the beginning. We weren't sure if he could be here. Everybody welcome Scratch." And they had Stray Cat Strut or Cat Scratch Fever playing. I danced with grandparents. I danced with kids. It was more fun. And I think that was part of it. It's just, and maybe Kathleen Hanlon was right. You get to be yourself for a few minutes.
And nobody knows who you are.
You just have a blast.
Yeah.
And Scratch was a blast. They talk about they had an all-star reference in the Netflix lead. In 1995, they revived the American Hockey League All-Star Game. They hadn't had it in years. And as part of it, they had a mascot skills competition. So Mark, the regular Scratch, who was skilled beyond belief in his splits and what he could do, he went down and competed, and he blew everybody away. So Scratch won the first mascot skills competition. Yeah, he was dynamite. So it was more fun. I love practicing law. I still practice law. I don't do the mascot gig anymore. Although I'll get asked when the Woo Sox came to town, "Oh, Geoff, are you going to be the next Woo Sox mascot?" And it's always fun to see.
Taken a life of its own, mascots now.
Sure.
Yeah, because like I said, the Red Sox didn't have one. You went to the game to see the game. Well, now
they have two.
It's all changed. Well,
Wally and the sister, I think.
They have a couple.
Yeah.
And tracks. Yeah, they all do. The
Woo Sox have three right now, I think.
They have three or
I'm
four.
not sure what the Railers have. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody has something.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it's well, Geoff, I want to thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
This is Paul McGrath saying thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the game. And if you're not in the game, I hope to see you on the sidelines.